I've been reflecting on Bill C-3 and what an honor it is to stand in this House, in this place. At the same time, I guess at some point in time, I look at it from a different angle and I say, why do I have the right to stand in this House and speak to C-3? So it's not because I sit on the Justice Committee. It's not because my office overlooks the Supreme Court of Canada. It's because I was duly elected to come to this place to represent all of my constituents. But we're going to talk about a little bit of history here, Madam Speaker. It kind of goes like this. But before I go there, I'm going to start with this. Madam Speaker, I'm a bit of a political geek, I suppose. And along my path of trying to become I'm going to suggest a politician, Madam Chair, I used to go on the various parties' websites and look at each individual MP and always wonder, always just be in absolute awe and dive into what they're doing and what they're saying. And one person that I always resonated with was Rona Ambrose. For some reason, she really stuck with me. And I guess it took till about last night for me to really understand why that was. Now, unfortunately, I haven't had an opportunity yet to meet Mrs. Ambrose, and I hope at some point in time I do. So this is kind of a hail call to her. I would love to talk to her at some point in time. And what better platform than to use in the House? But Madam Speaker, she was so far ahead of her time on this legislation. Unfortunately, as we all know, it's been introduced twice. It's failed twice. Now it's being introduced for the third time. And I believe it to be a fair statement, a true statement, that it's going to get unanimous consent throughout this House. And I don't want to speak for anyone, Madam Speaker, but I believe that to be the case. But I think we really have to celebrate the groundbreaking achievements that she made here with this legislation. So I want to thank Ms. Ambrose very much for her leadership on this legislation. And I could never be prouder to stand here in this place and speak to that. Madam Chair, I'm fortunate I got 20 minutes because I could probably talk for 2 hours. Or more. Madam Chair, I guess I'm going to start by saying this. First and foremost, there's 4 women in my life, 4 females in my life, I have to watch my language here, that have been incredibly influential to me along the way, on my path to where I stand here today, proud and excited to be a Canadian. First and foremost is my mother. My mother allowed me opportunity. She allowed me the gift of being myself. She allowed me the gift of openness, truthfulness, not being pushed into a corner. She allowed me to smile. She allowed me to make my own decisions without fault. And for that, I'll always be faithful. And the second person that I admire, and this is a real slippery slope here, is my lovely wife, Allison. So it always goes my mother and then my wife, because my mom's the one that's going to send me a text afterwards, by the way. The second one is my wife, Allison, of coming up on 22 years. A woman that, again, allows me to do what she knows that I believe is right for Canada and is right for this world. And she gives me the freedom. She gives me the longest dog leash ever to let me come to Ottawa and do what's right absolutely without any question. The third woman, Madam Speaker, which is why I'm so passionate about C-3 today, is my daughter, Faith. My daughter, Faith, is 17 years old. She's going to graduate, likely with honors, this year, Madam Speaker. From from grade 12, and her ambition in life, all she wants to do is be a veterinarian. Now, notwithstanding the fact that it's tougher to become a veterinarian in Canada than it is a general practitioner to get into the school, the very fact is I don't care what she wants to do. But I'm awfully proud of her. The fourth person, Madam Speaker. Yesterday morning I was on a Zoom call. I'm going to back up a little tiny bit here. About a year ago, or a year and a half ago, when I was running to become a member of Parliament, I went to a school in a place called Essex, which is in my riding, and I spoke to a grade 5 class. And when I got there with my handler, so to speak, we had to go to the principal's office. And who greeted me other than this amazing young woman? Her name is Jade. She's about yay tall and the most bubbly, energetic, fantastic, positive attitude you could ever imagine. I'm telling you, you've never met anybody like this. And by the way, I'm happy that she's as young as she is, because she could run for my spot and probably beat me, okay? She is just fantastic, and there's no rules with her. So yesterday, because I haven't got a chance to talk to Jade as of late, yesterday I'd asked her teacher from last year if we could please set up a Zoom call, and we did. And not only did I get to speak to Jade for about 20 minutes, I also got to speak to the rest of the class. Now, Madam Speaker, why am I saying this? Well, first and foremost, every day that we wake up, we learn something new. We can learn something new. And I got to tell you, if I don't say this, it would be disjustice to Jade. I said, Jade, tell me something exciting. What do you want to do? And here I'm thinking she wants to be the Prime Minister of Canada. She wants to, I don't know what she wants to do, but you got to understand this beautiful, beautiful young lady is just fantastic and full of passion for life. And she said, I want to work in a museum. I said, in a museum? Well, that's neat. I said, tell me something that I don't know. She said, well, I know. And she's got her hand up. I love it. And she said, I bet you don't know what a pangolin is. I said, a penguin? A pangolin. I said, I've never heard of pangolin in my life. And she said, well, Mr. Lewis, it's just an aardvark with a whole bunch of scales on them, and they're really pointy so nothing can get at it. I went, wow. Now, her teacher from last year, Mrs. Armstrong, was an enormous role model for that young woman, and I thank Mrs. Armstrong enormously for what she's done. But I'm telling you, Jade is the reason that I stand in this House so proudly, and I know we have to fight going forward. So, Madam Speaker, why do I bring up these stories? Why do I bring up the women? Because it is absolutely vital that we protect them. So let's just suggest for a moment, Madam Speaker, that my mother, or my wife, or my daughter, or Jade, along this path, would have been assaulted. I don't believe any of them to ever have been assaulted. But in the event that they did, how would that have impacted my life? How would that have changed? How would that have steered the ship in my life? Because they didn't get due justice. And so because of that, again, Madam Speaker, I'm incredibly proud to stand here and celebrate not only my mentors, but I'm sure the rest of this House has many mentors as well. Madam Speaker, I had a Zoom meeting back on October the 27th with an amazing woman, Marian Overholt. And we discussed the training for judges on sexual assault cases. And I'm going to read through a few of these points. So first and foremost, Madam Speaker, I was a firefighter for 7.5 years. And we responded to all types of calls, be it a fire, be it a heart attack. But actually, we responded at some point in time when the ambulance couldn't get there quick enough to assault victims. Remember one very dearly that I won't give details to? but I recall that like it was yesterday. But I didn't realize the people that were behind this, the people that, so as a firefighter, you go there, you put the fire out, and you go home to your family. But it continues on. And I didn't realize that until after this discussion with Mrs. Overholt. So she's actually appeared before the Justice Committee in the past. She has 37 years of practice. She's a community legal aid. She actually works out of the local OPP detachment. She goes on to talk about, in the past, victims have shied away from pressing charges because they do not think that they would be believed. Incredibly powerful statement. So if I go back to the four main ladies in my life, they did not believe that they would be believed. And those four ladies believe. It's an injustice, absolute injustice. She goes on to say that sexual assault often happens in private, intimate settings involving no witnesses and often without clear evidence. The narrow focus then becomes about credibility. Often the victim will not testify, but the complainant will, potentially widening the gap. So what does that mean? Well, to me, what it means is this. I'm going to go back to the basics here. Next year, I will proudly see my daughter off, hopefully, to university somewhere, be it Calgary, be it Guelph, or be it the States if COVID ever gets held under caps here. And I believe that she needs the right, she needs the confidence, she needs the belief that if something happens to her, she has every right in the world to come forward and have a voice and not feel victimized, but know that the courts and the justice will do their due diligence for her. She goes on to say, again, back to my meeting on October the 27th, Crown prosecutors don't actually present the victim, they represent the Crown, whereas the defense lawyer is there for the defendant. Well, that's an interesting conversation. The next time that I'm told that I'm guilty and or I'm a victim, I would certainly think that the Crown would go the other way, would actually reach out to the victim, especially when they don't necessarily have a voice. She goes on to say, the burden of proof is high, guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Victims will often describe the trial was worse than the assault. So what does that mean? So we had some great discussion about this. So because it takes so long to get to the courts, so if somebody is victimized tomorrow, blessed that they aren't, it can take years, Madam Speaker, to get to the courts. And by the time it gets to the courts, the healing process, the very inner, the healing process of the victim is starting to, I'm going to suggest so rudely, at least put a scab on it. And the very moment that it goes back to the courts, they have to look at the victim, or have to look at the defendant in the eye. They have to listen to the testimony. They peel the scab off, they peel the Band-Aid off, and they have to live through, again, what they've already been through years prior. Madam Speaker, that is deplorable, and that is wrong. If I may, 2 minutes left? Thank you. Madam Speaker, I'm going to speak very, very quickly about training. So, Madam Speaker, as I mentioned, I was in the fire department. I trained and trained and trained, be it CPR, be it WMIS, high-angle rescue ropes. When I was in my personal business, I had to do confined space, all kinds of training. And this upcoming week, Madam Speaker, as a member of Parliament, I am taking harassment training. My point is this, Madam Speaker. Nobody is above the law. Nobody. And shouldn't be. And if members of Parliament are good enough to do training, then surely our judges are fine to do this training. And why do I say that? Well, nobody is perfect. And why not? And I don't really call it training as much as I call it tools in the tool chest. So let's have this open discussion about if there's a case in Ontario, what's happening in BC? If there's a case in BC, what's happening in Newfoundland? And let those judges integrate and talk about this. Because quite frankly, Madam Speaker, this is a much, much larger discussion. But Madam Speaker, I would just wrap up with this, that again, I really want to thank Mrs. Ambrose for bringing this legislation forward. I will be proud, very, very proud and honored to vote in favor of Bill C-3. And thank you very much for your time, Madam Speaker. I appreciate it.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Bill C-3 is all about training of judges related to sexual assaults. And it really is applicable to federally appointed judges. The member made reference to being proud of his daughter. You know, yesterday, my daughter, who happens to be an MLA in the province of Manitoba, introduced Bill 215. Bill 215 is known as the Provincial Court Amendment Act. It, in essence, does the very same thing that Bill C-3 does here for federal appointed judges. In order for us as a society to be able to move even further on this issue, we need provincial legislatures and territorial legislatures to adopt similar legislation. So as he is proud of his daughter, I too am proud of my daughter. And I would encourage the Manitoba legislature to do what the House of Commons here has done. Recognized a good idea that was brought forward by a Conservative interim leader. And it will be supported unanimously here. Would he recommend that the Manitoba legislature do likewise?
The Honourable Member for Essex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and through you to the Honourable Member, and thank you so much for the question. I would recommend that I won't recommend because I'm not part of the Manitoba legislature, but by all means, this is absolutely vital. And by the way, Madam Speaker, through you again to my Honourable Member, I can only appreciate how proud you are of your daughter, and rightly so, sir. Sorry, his daughter, my bad. But no, I think we have to look at this on a very national scale. I think it's absolutely vital that in each region, in each province, we continue to push this forward to protect the most vulnerable and to make sure that they are the most vulnerable are the ones that have a voice at the table when it goes to the courts. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? Honorable député de Abitibi-Témiscamingue.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Honnêtement, je trouve que cette Chambre manque souvent d'interventions féministes comme celle que vient de faire le député d'Essex. En fait, ça prendrait plus d'interventions comme celle-là. Moi, je crois que ces enjeux-là vont pouvoir être davantage mis de l'avant. On va atteindre l'égalité lorsque, justement, davantage d'hommes vont prendre la parole sur des enjeux qui touchent les femmes. Donc, merci pour ce témoignage-là. Et ce que j'attendais aussi de ce discours-là que j'ai écouté avec intérêt, c'est de voir quel élément de la formation que ces juges-là pourraient avoir. Si c'était lui le formateur, le député d'Essex, quels éléments il aimerait pouvoir sensibiliser les juges et sur lesquels on pourrait amener des pistes d'action? Voilà ma question.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and through you to the Honourable Member, and thank you very much for your comments. Sir, specific to the training, again, as I wrapped up, my final point there was, I think the biggest thing is we need the training to not only dive into the details, but to make sure that we have an open communication across the country. Because again, what happens in BC, Ontario justices may not know. And if there's an experience, if we don't have to reinvent the wheel, then that open line of dialogue needs to happen. But again, Madam Speaker, through you, it is absolutely vital and will always be vital that the victims have a true voice at the table and they are heard and they believe that they can bring their issues forward, Madam Speaker, and not feel as though their voice is left out. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his comments. I know that he acknowledged the re-victimization of women who have experienced sexual assault when they seek justice. I'm wondering if the member also agrees that in addition to women issues that women have experienced injustice, if it isn't compounded further for Indigenous and BIPOC women who often feel or experience the dual re-victimization based not just only on their gender, but also on their identity.
The honourable member for Essex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through to you, thank you so much to the honourable member for the question. I never thought I'd be able to speak for so long at 20 minutes and not even get to some of my other points. Madam Speaker, back in my other days, I actually flew into 2 Indigenous reserves in northern Manitoba. And I will tell you that one of the elders' homes that I went to, there was actually a victim in that home. So I have been actually speaking about, through Bill C-7, disabilities, specific to disabilities with our Indigenous peoples, and I would suggest strongly that yes, this is not just stopped here in this House. This goes across Canada, across all peoples, be it the Indigenous or people of color. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
And thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And to the member, I really, really appreciated your speech. You know, this really is about young women and girls and making sure that as we grow and generations grow, that we understand that women are not women are not an object. And I really appreciate the words that you have. And I know that this member will definitely always defend women's rights when it comes to their safety and security. I just wonder if the member can continue on with some of his thoughts on how we can do more than just, teaching our judges, but what we could possibly do in the education system or dealing with young boys and girls and having them understand their own sexuality as well as respecting others. And if he has any thoughts on that. Thank you.
The honourable member for Essex.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to my honourable member, and thank you again for the question. So, yes, absolutely. I think it needs to start long before it ever gets to the training for the judges. It needs to happen in our schools. I think to some extent, the discussion has already started. But has it gone far enough? I have to question if it has, because if a young lady comes out of grade 8 going into grade 9, well, that's one thing. But when they come out of grade 12 and are shipped off, sent to university on their own will, and something happens there, which is much more likely, have we told them that it's okay to stand up for yourself? Have we told them, both women and men, that it's okay to tell the story? And that it's okay, and you will be trusted and you will be believed by our court system. So yes, there's a lot more that needs to be done within our school system for sure. Madam Chair, through you to the honourable member, but I believe to some extent it started. I can only say that, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, I'm sorry, because I've got a 21-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 17-year-old at home. So I just watched them come through the school system. And I know that some of the discussions happen, but much more needs to be done. Madam Speaker, thank you.